Hello, I am Andy Luebke, and I am here to talk about our journey with making a native application leveraging Mendix 8 for our company Erie Insurance. And our problem that we had was that we have no native developers, even though our business partners really wanted us to be able to go make a native application because they're getting pressure from our agents and our customers that they want to be able to do certain things on a native app. So what we had to do is we went back as a solution engineer to be able to define the technologies and what we wanted to be able to achieve based on those requirements. And we went back and we decided on Mendix. So with that, we went back and also determined what we wanted to do from the native side and compare that with our web. And we wanted to ensure that our architecture really aligned with what we wanted to be able to do between the two, and that we were able to share a lot of stuff. So we do have multiple tiers inside of the application architecture. And to be able to fulfill that, our technical lead really took this simple diagram and really took the team and built the entire application and functionality. So to be able to describe all of that, I am going to introduce Mike Grimes.
Hi, I'm Mike Grimes. I am a senior software engineer at Erie Insurance, and I'm the tech lead over the customer mobile app application project. So first off, I want to talk a little bit about the difference between web design and app design. So our customer online portal has been mobile responsive for several years now, but making this transition to a native application gave us the opportunity to kind of reassess that and see if there's any changes that needed to be made. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure of was bringing the primary actions that the user would care most about to the forefront, making them easy to get to so that they can get in, get out, and move on. We also wanted to make sure that they're not scrolling for this information and going through a bunch of stuff that they no longer cared about at this point. Um, Whenever they interact with our application, we wanted to make sure that the tap area was large enough so they're not trying to use their finger to tap on a very precise point in the application. And finally, we want to make sure that we are supporting the native functionality. So whether it is biometric authentication or something in the future where we're utilizing the camera or the gyroscope or whatever the case may be, we want to make sure that we're taking full advantage of what the device offers us. So I want to go through a little slideshow demonstration of our application, point out some of the key things and key functionalities and key decisions that we made during our development. And because I know the dangers of doing a live demonstration, these are just going to be slides. So first off, we have the login page. So this looks like a very standard login page that a customer would normally see. You know, their email, asking for their email address, their password. What you may not realize here, though, is this is actually a web view component. This means that we are serving up a web page within the native client. And we do this because our authentication method uses SAML for a single sign-on, which is best utilized through a browser. So figuring out the interactions between a web view and native client was one of our bigger challenges recently. The Mendix application out of the box does provide a web view component, but it did not offer all the functionality that we needed, such as being able to inject JavaScript into the web browser and being able to communicate messages back from the browser to the native client. Next, you'll see there's this little smiling face in the top right corner. This indicates that the customer actually has biometric authentication set up, so they can actually log in using their face, as this case may be. Next, after the user has logged in, they'll be taken to their home screen. This home screen provides their list of policies with Erie Insurance. So all the data here, including that list of policies, the agency data, and any active claims that they may have, those are all retrieved through services back to Erie's data center. We were able to accomplish this using the nanoflow to microflow interactions. This did not exist when we first started using Mendix 8, but luckily it was added in a later version and we were able to utilize it, which was key in order to accomplish our goals of security and reusability. Um, as mentioned before, we want to make sure that the primary actions were put to the forefront, and those being making a payment and being able to access their auto ID card. Any of the other secondary actions were put into the menu, which the customer can access by tapping the top right icon. Next thing I want to draw your attention to is another widget that we created, and this was a modal window. This what a modal window does is focuses the user's attention on a specific piece of content or some interaction point, and this is something that we had to add in using a React Native third-party library. We made sure that this was very customizable so that the developer can choose whether the modal enters the screen from the left, from the right, top, bottom, and exits whichever direction needed as well. Uh, the content is fully customizable so that they can use any of the standard Mendix widgets inside of it, mainly going to be things like text or drop downs, text box, whatever the case may be. The one that we show here is a partial page modal. So the height of it will only be as tall as the content needs it to be, as opposed to something like the full page modal that we use for the menu, where it always takes up the entire height of the device. So next, let's say the customer wants to view one of their policies. So for our example, we'll look at a auto policy. The auto policy will display a lot of information about the policy. Whether, again, any active claims that they have for it, any scheduled payments they have, their billing details. And then the actions that they can do on this page depend on the type of policy it is. Since this is a auto policy, they can make a payment on it, they can view their auto ID card, or they can view their policy information, which will further explain all the coverages available by this policy. So once again, all this information is retrieved from our nanoflow to microflow interactions. So speaking of the auto ID card, uh, as well as the billing documents and the policy information document, these are all PDFs. But instead of forcing the customer to download the PDF and then viewing them in a separate app, we display it within our own application, making sure that they're staying focused within our workflow. This was accomplished with another custom pluggable widget using a React Native third-party library. Using this library, they can do things like zooming in, zooming out, scrolling, whatever the case may be. We also used another library for sharing this document so that once they hit the share button, and as you can see in the bottom left of the screen, but if the customer is holding it, it'd be the bottom right as in landscape view. They can save the PDF to their device if they want to, or they can email it, whatever their phone is capable of syncing up with. So next, I want to talk about some of the challenges and things to watch out for that we notice while creating our mobile application. So you heard me talk a lot about extending the base functionality of a Mendix app. This is accomplished using React Native libraries, and this is by the nature of React Native, keeping libraries to do one thing and then including them as you need them. Usually the installation of these libraries is very straightforward. Downloading them, installing them, and half the time you're usually probably done. Some can be a little bit more complicated. Maybe you need to add permissions to Android or iOS in order to use the functionality, uh, or you might even need to customize the code a little bit within the Java or Objective-C or Swift itself. Uh, so you want to make sure that you are reading the installation documentation for each library and make sure you really understand it so you know what you're getting yourself into. Um, Next, if you have included additional libraries in your application, you will no longer be able to use the Make It Native developer app from the app stores. You will have to create your own custom developer app and include these libraries in that as well. When we at the very beginning, this was not made available to us, but they quickly added it, and we've made great use of it since then. Um, and in fact, they've made it even easier in recent versions by including it in the native builder within Mendix Studio Pro. So once you create this app, you can then put it on an emulator or a physical test device, however you normally test locally. So next, React Native bridges the gap between iOS and Android development so that you have one common facade that you can code in, but there are still some differences between iOS and Android that you might have to account for, whether it's just their design or how the React Native library works on that platform. One such instance was with our share functionality. When we first installed it, it worked fine with our base 64 encoded PDFs. We were able to share them, email them, save them, whatever the phone allowed, right out of the box. We didn't have to do anything special. With iOS, however, there was some additional steps that we needed to take, and this luckily was documented already in the share libraries documentation, so that we're able to follow their solution, their workaround, and get it working within the Mendix environment. Other things that we had to account for were alert windows, modals, modal windows, how they were shown and closed uh, was more finicky in the iOS environment than, say, the Android one. So again, just minor differences that we had to account for just based on which platform the code was running on. One of the other things that can be pretty different between the uh, platforms is how it gets released to the App Store. This process is controlled entirely by Apple and Google, and they can change it whenever they feel the need to, and they feel the need to pretty frequently at times. There were several releases in a row where it seemed like there was new information that we need to provide whenever we're trying to set up for a release. So my advice here is just make sure that you go out, stay aware of any upcoming changes to them, and give yourself time to prepare for that. So finally, we mentioned several different custom pluggable widgets that we've created for our solution. And so each time we did that, we had to make considerations for whether it made sense to do it ourselves, or was this something that was likely going to be added to the base Mendix project in the future. And even if it was it going to be offer everything that we needed, or was that going to be in a time frame that was acceptable to us? Um, so most of the time, we went ahead and did the custom widgets because we needed it right then. Uh, One example of creating a widget and then being replaced, when we were doing our proof of concept in Mendix, we had to create a widget for displaying SVG images within a React Native application. This was later added to the base Mendix project in one of their future releases. Since the functionality was the same, we were able to switch over to the base SVG widget and scrapped our custom one. It wasn't really a waste. It didn't take too much time to do it anyways. And we usually prefer to try to keep with the um, base application as much as possible as it makes updates easier in the future. So that's about it. I hope our story was able to give your mind some ease about creating a mobile application with even if you'd have no mobile developers.
Well, thank you, Mike, for sharing your wonderful story of your implementation around our native application. And I thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Mendix World Conference. Thank you very much.